Okay, we've been studying Matthew chapter 25, and we are going into verse 24. And kind of what happens, kind of a quick summary of what happened in the past, is that Jesus is talking about the parable of the talents, where three different employees were given three different things to do based upon their skill set. You know, the first employee, was given 5 talents and told to do what he needed. The second employee was given 2 talents, and one was given 1 talent. And we learned that the first 2 employees were extremely successful and were equally blessed. So even though that one had 5, one did a lot more, the one who had the second, didn't have as much, but did the best he could, got equal treatment, which was really great. Now we're getting to the last employee who didn't do quite what the others did. In fact, he said that he took the money and hid it. He didn't do nothing with it. And this is where we're starting in verse 24. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and I went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, that is thine. The master judged each of the servants individually. If they were taken as a group, they would have done very well. 8 talents given and 15 talents returned. Yet each one was judged on their individual faithfulness and effort. Spurgeon would write, remember, my hearer, that in the day of judgment thy account must be personal. God will not ask you what your church did. He will ask you what you did yourself. The servant who merely buried his talent tried to excuse himself because of his master's great power. In fact, he believed his master to be, in some sense, omnipotent, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. Bruce would write on this, speaking about him being a hard man, grasping, ungenerous, talking all to himself, offering no inducements to his servants. In other words, this guy was blaming his master, his employer, for his lack of progress. It's your fault. F.B. Meyer expressed the thinking of this servant. I can do very little. It will not make much difference if I do nothing. I shall not be missed. My tiny push is not needed to turn the scale. It means that it doesn't matter, we see this even where I work, that you'll have an employee, a lot of times a newer one, that thinks that they feel insignificant. So they just do the bare minimum, and you're never going to get anywhere. But without realizing that the calls that you take, like where I work, that each person, you are changing that person's day. And you have the power to make that person have that person a good day, or you have the power to make that person have a bad day. Or you can be completely indifferent and be mean, and they won't even remember your name. I like people to remember my name. Granted, they may still call me Jonathan, Jeremy, Justin, Jack. It's still Joshua. Can I call you Bob? No, sorry, it's still Joshua. But the fact is, you want them to remember you because it makes an impact. Even the smallest detail, can make the biggest impact. Sometimes, like in my job, just being there to listen and being understanding, even if I can't really do anything to fix their issue, because it may not be an issue T-Mobile can fix or any company can fix. It might be something in their family. But just being there and listening and caring makes a difference. And so here you have this employee, though, well, I'm not going to make a difference, so I'm not. He doesn't do nothing. Poole would write on this, it is the genius of the wicked men to lay the blame of their miscarriages upon others, oftentimes upon God himself. In other words, it's not my fault that I'm in this position, it's your fault. We see this a lot in this day and age where people aren't accountable. A person, goes and robs and steals, and it's not his fault. It's because hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they were oppressed, or hundreds of years ago this happened. Well, that doesn't have any bearing on what is happening today. So why did you make those decisions? Well, I shouldn't be accountable. But the truth is, accountability is power. that doctor that I worked with, that I was there with, we talked about that. He says, absolutely. He says, my patients. He says, as a doctor, he goes, as a, oh, they're just finished? Oh, okay. He said, as a doctor, he said that I can only tell I can only tell a patient what they should do. He says what they actually do are completely different. The third servant seemed proud of himself. Because the master was so powerful and in the mind of the servant didn't need his help, the third servant thought that the master would be pleased that he did nothing and could say, look, here is what is yours. He seemed to have no idea how much he had displeased his master. We can say in the third servant's favor that at least he still understood that what he had been given belonged to his master. He said, you have what is yours. Many modern servants of God think when God gives them something, it no longer belongs to God. It belongs to them, and they can do with it as they please. Spurgeon would write, yet albeit this man was doing nothing for his master, he did not think himself an unprofitable servant. He exhibited no self-depreciation, no humbling, no contrite, no contrition. He was as bold as brass, and said unblushingly, lo, thou hast that is thine. We can say of the work of the third servant, he didn't think, he didn't work, he didn't even try, he made excuses. Moving on to verse 26. His Lord answered and said to him, thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him that hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The condemnation of this third servant, here called a wicked and lazy servant, was strong. The sovereignty of the master never excused the laziness of the servant. It condemned that laziness all the more. Those who don't work for the Lord or pray or don't evangelize because God is sovereign condemn themselves by their laziness. By their actions or lack of action, they show that they are like the wicked servant in this parable. They do not know their master's heart at all. The Lord of the unprofitable servant tells him that the fault lay in his own sloth and wickedness, and his dread of his Lord's security was but a mere frivolous pretense and an unreasonable excuse. The charge against the servant who merely buried his talent was that he was wicked and lazy. We rarely see laziness as a real sin, something that must be repented of before the Lord. If laziness were a calling or a spiritual gift, this man would have been excellent. Not dishonest, the master had not misjudged as to that, but indolent, unenterprising, timid, slothful, a poor creature altogether, suspicious, timid, heartless, spiritless, idle. We might say that this servant did not have the proper fear of his master, but an unfitting fear of risk and failure. This man could have done something with what he had. Even if he had not doubled, it would have gained some interest for the master's money if he changed it to the exchange station. It would have at least made something. If we cannot trade directly and personally on our Lord's account, if we have not the skill nor the tact to manage a society or enterprise for him, we may at least contribute to what others are doing and join our capital to theirs, so that by some means our master may have the interest to which he is entitled. It was written by Spurgeon. The Old Testament forbade Israelites from charging interest against one another, Exodus 22:25, Leviticus 25:35-37. Deuteronomy 23:19, Psalms 15:5. But interest on money loaned to Gentiles was permitted. By the New Testament times, Jewish scholars had already distinguished between lending and interest and usury in the modern sense. There are those who have things like the servant with 1 talent, but hold them in such a way that it is as if they have nothing. These ones will find what they had taken away. Those who hold what they have received as faithful men and women, to them more will be given. See that ye receive not any grace of God in vain, neither envy those that have much. A proportion is expected. We need not wait for the great future to obtain the multiplication or withdrawal of our talents. They are already waxing or waning in our hands. Basically, God has given us skills and opportunities to do good, to move His service forward. What we do with it is our own choice. They said, don't waste the skills that you have. Because he was wicked and lazy, the third servant demonstrated that he was not a true servant of his master at all. It is a fitting that he and those who show the same heart was cast forever out of the master's presence. Just as there was a sense of heaven in the destiny of the 2 faithful servants, there is a strong sense of hell in the destiny of the wicked and lazy servant. In the larger context of Matthew 25, the main point of this parable is clear. Our readiness for Jesus' return is determined by our stewardship of the resources that He has given us. Some think the readiness for Jesus' return is a very, very spiritual and abstract thing. It isn't really. It is a matter of being about our business for the Lord. In light of this parable, we must ask ourselves, what have we done with our knowledge, our time, our money, our abilities? The sin of omission, what we don't do, may ultimately be more dangerous than the sins of commission, what we do. That doing nothing is just as bad as doing something at all, as doing something wrong itself. And that concludes today's lesson.